We have to amputate your legs today." That's what the doctor told me as I lay in a hospital bed. The blinding fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, my nostrils filled with that bleach hospital smell overpowering me in the cramped, chilly room. My wife squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No," she cried, he can't live the rest of his life in a wheelchair." "Without the amputation," he told me, "you'll be dead within a year." I couldn't believe it. My passion had always been hiking, and my wife and I had dreamed of one day hiking the Appalachian Trail. But 4 years ago, the doctors were going to put me under anesthesia and cut off my legs, leaving nothing but worthless stumps. All because I was one of 115 million Americans with pre-diabetes or diabetes, the disease that ran rampant through my body, thrashing the blood vessels in my limbs until it practically cut off the circulation to my legs. The doctor made it clear that if he didn't amputate, my legs would rot like spoiled meat. So what happened? And why am I telling you this? Well, I'll answer the second question first. My name is David Andrews, and I'm telling you this because I don't want you to go through the same horrifying experience that I did. Now, when all this happened, I didn't know all that much about this debilitating and potentially deadly disease. But now, I've done my homework, and in my research, I've uncovered some eye-opening, even shocking facts. But I've also found hope for folks like me, folks who have diabetes. Now, a lot of folks act like I did when I got diagnosed with diabetes. We let the statistics go in one ear and out the other. But this is important, because every single person represented in these statistics is someone like you and me. A mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a son or a daughter, grandparents, friends, neighbors, co-workers, loved ones, you and me. We don't think we're going to become a statistic, but that's what this horrible disease does to folks like us. Like the stat I was being faced with that day at the hospital. Did you know that every day over 200 people with diabetes have a limb amputated? That's over 70,000 per year. And even more distressing, 1 in 4 didn't know that they had diabetes until it was too late. But worst of all, amputation, well, it isn't even the most dangerous part of uncontrolled blood sugar. You may or may not know that diabetes also leads to Alzheimer's, dementia, heart failure, and cancer. You see, when you have excess glucose, your blood becomes a nutrition-packed smoothie for cancer tumors. It helps them grow at deadly speeds. That's why the Harvard Medical School Cancer Center has warned that up to 80% of all cancer is at least partially caused by imbalanced blood glucose and insulin. Oh, but it doesn't end there. A study published in the medical journal Neurology found that diabetes almost doubled the risk of dementia. Your glucose-packed blood constantly rushes through your brain, adding to the buildup that causes Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. Now, when I read that, I had trouble not imagining it happening inside my own brain. As I kept reading about my disease, it only got worse. One study showed that if you've got diabetes, your risk of heart attack is 11 times higher than the average person. Now, at my age, I already had to worry about heart attacks, and it was terrifying to learn that my risk was so much higher than I thought. Another study found that diabetes increases your risk of having a stroke by 150%, and during a stroke, diabetes makes it even harder for blood to get to your brain. For most people, a stroke has about a 17% chance of being fatal, but if you're diabetic, a stroke is almost a 100% death sentence. I knew type 2 diabetes was bad, but it wasn't until I found these stats that I realized just how deadly of a situation I was in. So if high blood sugar and type 2 diabetes are so deadly, why do most doctors prescribe treatments that only manage the symptoms while ignoring the root cause? Especially when new research has revealed the real cause of diabetes and provided a simple solution to jumpstart your body's blood glucose regulation system. The short answer is that in the last few years, 11 pharmaceutical giants have been caught bribing hospitals and doctors to prescribe their medicine, regardless of the best treatment. But I'll share those details with you in just a second. First, I want to tell you the story of my own diabetes battle and tell you the story of how Dr. Roy Taylor solved that decades-old medical mystery and changed diabetes treatment as we know it forever. and how you can use his scientific discoveries to restore your healthy blood sugar and even reverse your type 2 diabetes. This new solution works by jump-starting your pancreas, the part of your body that keeps your blood sugar levels healthy, keeping away insulin resistance. With this pancreas jump-start solution that I'm about to show you, you'll be able to reverse your type 2 diabetes, sharply reducing or even eliminating your need for medication. When you watch this video to the very end, I'm also going to show you the easiest, most relaxing trick I use to instantly lower my blood sugar after I enjoy something sweet. Because I'm a sucker for a can of Coke or a bowl of vanilla ice cream and apple pie. It isn't some gimmick you see on the internet, like drinking gallons of water or soaking your food in vinegar. It's just cold, hard facts discovered by medical researchers to keep your blood sugar down for up to 24 hours. Because when you jumpstart your pancreas, you'll be able to do it without losing your favorite foods, without getting drenched in sweat and gasping for breath from exhausting workouts, and without needing impossible levels of self-control. But I'll warn you, the $245 billion pharmaceutical industry is making a fortune with their insanely priced insulin shots and oral medications, which come packed with painful side effects and only help manage the symptoms of your diabetes, leaving you on diabetes life support until you die. You should know that in late 2014, the federal government slapped diabetes medication manufacturer Sanofi with fraud charges for bribing hospitals and doctors millions of dollars to push their medication on innocent people with diabetes like you and me. And they're just one of over 40 pharmaceutical companies who have faced similar fraud charges in the last 10 years. Once the word spreads about jump-starting your pancreas to reverse type 2 diabetes, Big Pharma is going to be out billions of dollars. So you can imagine the fraudster CEOs aren't happy that you're watching this. Because once you know these secrets, you're only weeks away from reversing your type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, and for some people, it's as quick as 11 days. It doesn't matter if you've had your disease for decades. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if your blood sugar levels are sky high. Just imagine, once you discover how to jumpstart your pancreas, which I'll show you in this presentation, you'll be free from annoying insulin shots and painful finger pricks. You'll say goodbye to medicines that make you fat and nauseous. You'll stop worrying about early death, amputations, and risky surgeries. Your painful, tingling neuropathy in your feet, your hands, and everywhere else in your body will just fade away. You'll remove the stress of wondering when your vision will completely fail, leaving you blind for the rest of your life. You'll break free from the anxiety of constantly monitoring your blood sugar, watching jealously as other people eat your favorite foods. Oh, and you'll never again feel like a burden on your family and friends. Just like Andrew from Battleground, Washington, who said, "Your presentation showed me the simple solution to my diabetes, and you had the science to back it up. My doctor was shocked when I told him that I hadn't needed an insulin shot for weeks. He had to test my blood sugar himself to believe it. I reversed my diabetes in just 17 days. And there's Doug from Salt Lake City, Utah, who said, "Just the thought of vacation or even a day on the town made me feel exhausted. Diabetes made me feel like a prisoner in my own life. I'm so glad that I found this scientifically proven way to reverse my type 2 diabetes. Everybody with type 2 diabetes needs to watch this video right now so they can reverse their diabetes in just a few weeks." Listen, it's not your fault you have this disease, and it's not an issue of being skinny or fat. Once you know the real cause of type 2 diabetes, you'll sharply reduce or even eliminate your need for medication, which you can imagine will put a dent in the fraudulent profits of those 11 pharmaceutical companies. So turn off your cell phone, grab a pen and paper. You're about to discover how to destroy your type 2 diabetes. First, let me introduce myself. My name is David Andrews. I'm 51. I have a wife and 2 children, and I'm the head chef at a 5-star restaurant near Washington, D.C. Now, I'm going to share my story with you, and honestly, it's a little embarrassing, but it's worth it if it'll help you get free from your disease. A few years ago, I almost lost everything. I'd been suffering from type 2 diabetes for over a decade. I always had to worry about what foods would send my blood sugar off the charts. Heck, I became a chef because I loved food, and now I was stuck eating bland, boring meals. I was a burden on my family, and I was terrified my kids would end up with my disease. Every single day, I had to prick my finger to test my blood sugar, then give myself painful insulin shots. I was spending about $2,000 per month on insulin. I tried the other diabetes medications that my doctor recommended, like metformin, Actos, or Amaryl. That was a disaster because I emptied my bank account and just about killed myself taking them. Metformin and Actos made me feel nauseous all the time, and Amaryl just made me fat. Plus, a study in the New England Journal of Medicine linked several diabetes medicines to a 64% higher risk of heart attack or cardiovascular death. Even when I spent a week at the beach with my family, I couldn't relax. I was always worrying about my blood sugar and whether I could get back to the cooler if I needed my insulin. My type 2 diabetes was emptying my wallet, destroying my body, and just making my life miserable. I felt trapped. You've probably felt that way before, haven't you? Terrified that your diabetes is going to make your life worse and worse until it finally decides to kill you? But for me, it was about to get even worse. I'll never forget that day in my restaurant's kitchen. I was understaffed on a Saturday evening, the busiest shift of the week. My stress was through the roof. My heart was pounding. In the kitchen, it felt hotter and more humid than ever. I received an order for a medium rare steak, and then my knees went weak. The next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital, seeing my wife and 2 teenage kids sitting around me, their eyes red and puffy from crying. The room, it smelled like cleaning liquid, and I heard the steady beeping of the heart monitor. When my wife saw I was awake, she threw her arms around me and then called for the doctor. My son and daughter looked at me like they were watching their daddy die. And I guess they were. The doctor came in and explained what happened. "You went into a diabetic coma," he said. "A non-ketotic hyperglycemic hypersmolar coma. Your blood glucose level was at 1174. One of the other chefs had called 911, and some quick-thinking paramedics and ER doctors had saved my life. If I'd been alone when it happened, I'd be dead." The doctor cleared his throat like he was nervous about telling me something even worse. "Because your diabetes is so advanced," he said, "we'll need to remove your legs. I've scheduled the surgery for this afternoon. It's every diabetic's worst fear. Amputation." "No," said my wife, "absolutely not." "I'm sorry," the doctor insisted. "We can give him another 10 years to live, but we have to operate immediately." My daughter started to cry. While my wife argued with the doctor, I got lost in my thoughts. Amputation, and only 10 years to live. I didn't believe it. The doctor had to be wrong. How was I going to support my family? I couldn't run a restaurant kitchen from a wheelchair. I'd spend my last years crippled and useless. The future felt like a dark, terrifying path that I didn't want to go through. I didn't know it yet, but if it wasn't for the fraudsters at these 11 pharmaceutical companies bribing doctors to prescribe their drugs, then I might have already heard about this natural method to reverse my disease. It was like they had ripped away my golden years of retirement, robbed me of my chance to meet my grandchildren, and destroyed the life I'd worked so hard to build. But I'll get to that in just a second. Now, all the time I was thinking this, my wife was arguing with the doctor. And trust me, when my wife gets upset, she tends to get what she wants. When I started listening again, she was telling the doctor, "There is no way you're cutting off his legs today. The longest we can wait is 90 days, said the doctor. "If we wait any longer, it'll be too dangerous." My wife gave a short little nod like she'd won, but the tears glistening in her eyes told me she was heartbroken. The next week was the worst week of my life. I sat at home on my couch, scared and depressed. My family treated me like I was already dead. My daughter said, "I love you, Daddy," every time she walked by, and my son got mad and wouldn't talk to me. He didn't understand why I couldn't be around forever. I was ready to give up. But then a Facebook post saved me. My friend shared an article about a rogue diabetes researcher named Roy Taylor. He's a medical doctor and professor of medicine and metabolism at Newcastle University. If you haven't heard of Newcastle University, it's in England, and it's one of the most respected universities in the world, right up there with Harvard or Oxford. Other universities look to Newcastle as a pioneer in health research. Its professors and alumni have received numerous awards and medals for their achievements in science and medicine. And more importantly, they've saved millions of lives by curing and preventing diseases. And Dr. Taylor fits right in. His research has been published in dozens of medical journals, changing the way we see diabetes. Yale University even tried to hire him, but he felt loyal to Newcastle. A few years ago, Dr. Taylor faced his biggest challenge yet, a medical mystery that had gone unsolved since 1954. When type 2 diabetics have gastric bypass surgery, their diabetes disappears almost overnight. This happens all over the world, and it's been happening for decades. The thing is, gastric bypass surgery is an operation on the stomach. It doesn't have anything to do with blood sugar or diabetes. And yet almost every single patient has their blood sugar and insulin levels return to normal, reversing their type 2 diabetes and reducing or even eliminating their need for medication. But for years, no one knew why. Something was reversing their type 2 diabetes, and Dr. Taylor set out to figure out what. Now, we already knew that type 2 diabetics have fat deposits around their pancreas, but for years, researchers thought they were an effect of the disease. Here's what Dr. Taylor discovered. These fat deposits are the primary cause of the disease. You see, the pancreas produces insulin, the hormone that helps your body absorb blood sugar. That means the pancreas is the organ responsible for keeping your blood glucose levels normal. It's a precise job. Not enough insulin, and your blood sugar will skyrocket. So when fat deposits form around the pancreas, it throws everything out of whack. That fat squeezes and invades the pancreas, preventing it from producing enough insulin and increasing your body's insulin resistance. That means your bloodstream gets less insulin, and the insulin that's actually there can barely do its job of helping your body absorb blood sugar. Your blood glucose levels stay dangerously high, and you develop type 2 diabetes. Dr. Taylor realized that for the gastric bypass patients, their type 2 diabetes disappeared because the fat deposits around their pancreas disappeared. So you get rid of the fat deposits, and you get rid of type 2 diabetes. Now remember, the surgery doesn't touch these fat deposits, so the mystery continued. What was dissolving these fat deposits? Finally, in early 2012, Dr. Taylor discovered the answer. Everyone that goes through gastric bypass surgery is given a temporary meal plan to follow. This meal plan has the exact fats, sugars, carbs, and essential vitamins and minerals to attack and destroy those fat deposits around the pancreas. Getting rid of them so quickly was like giving a jump start to the pancreas. With the fat deposits gone, the pancreas kicked back into gear, regulating blood glucose by producing the right amount of insulin and lowering insulin resistance. So by the end of this meal plan, virtually every single person reduced or eliminated their need for diabetes medication. Dr. Taylor was thrilled. He had discovered the real cause of type 2 diabetes, and he discovered the solution that had been right under everyone's noses for decades. Oh, and since Dr. Taylor works at one of the top diabetes research universities in the world, he didn't have to try to convince people that he was right. He could prove it. He designed a temporary meal plan to jumpstart the pancreas based on the one used by the gastric bypass patients. Then he ran a medical study at Newcastle University, which in 2013 was published in the medical journal Diabetologia. He gave his meal plan to people with type 2 diabetes from all walks of life, men, women, young, old, the newly diagnosed, and people who'd had the disease for decades. The results were amazing. Every single person who completed the study saw the fat deposits around their pancreas disappear, their blood sugar normalize, and their type 2 diabetes reversed. They were all able to stop taking their medication. I'll say that again. All of the participants, 100%. Now remember, these results were peer-reviewed in the medical journal Diabetologia, which means other researchers tested them for accuracy with the utmost scrutiny. Now, when I read how successful this was, I was both excited and furious. Excited because now I had hope for the future, and furious because Dr. Taylor published his study several years ago. Why wasn't it the first thing my doctor told me when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes? What he should have said was, "You have this disease, now let's get rid of it." Instead, what they actually said was, "You have this disease, let's put a bandaid on the symptoms." Because that's what diabetes medication and insulin shots are. They're just bandaid fixes that only treat the symptoms, when the root cause of your disease is the fat deposits around your pancreas. Now, I wasn't just complaining. I really wanted to know why I'd never heard about this. I've gone to the same doctor for 20 years. I trust him. If he knew there was a solution, he would have told me. What I discovered next made my blood boil. The federal government recently charged the diabetes medication manufacturer Sanofi with fraud. Big Pharma has been bribing doctors and hospitals to prescribe their diabetes medication. It's a French company called Sanofi, and they've been charged with bribing hospitals and doctors in the U.S. to prescribe Sanofi diabetes medication. Now, I'm talking tens of millions of dollars, and that's not even the worst of it. In just the last 10 years, 11 of the top 25 pharmaceutical companies have faced similar bribery charges, and 24 of the top 25 companies have faced other fraud charges, including covering up dangerous side effects, lying about success rates, and illegally inflating prices. In fact, look at this list of pharmaceutical companies who have faced fraud charges. Last year, in the U.S. alone, pharmaceutical companies paid $3.75 billion in penalties for fraud. That's more than the previous 8 years combined. The problem is only getting worse. So it's no wonder the word about this natural treatment hadn't got out. Pharmacy giants like Sanofi are bribing doctors to prescribe their drugs instead. Obviously, they couldn't have bribed every single doctor, but they don't have to. Just bribing a few is enough to stop the news of this discovery from spreading. So I knew if I wanted to reverse my diabetes, I was on my own. I recreated the method that Dr. Taylor used, and since I'm a chef, I kept all the vital aspects of his meal plan and added my own flair to make it delicious. I tried it out, and it worked. After just 3 weeks, my blood glucose levels were normal, and I didn't need insulin injections. But even after that, I knew I wasn't done. You see, for half of the participants in Dr. Taylor's study, the fat deposits reformed around their pancreas and their disease came back. You see, I wanted my type 2 diabetes gone for good. So I had to figure out what exactly kept the other 50% of participants diabetes-free. Here's what I discovered. If you boost your metabolism, then your disease can't come back. Now, there's a million ways to boost your metabolism, but I needed methods that worked especially well for ex-diabetics. So I set a few requirements. First, I had to be able to do these metabolism-boosting tricks in less than 5 minutes. Second, I wasn't interested in running marathons or any other ridiculous cardio. Third, I wanted to do it from the comfort of my home. I found 7 metabolism-boosting tricks that fit all 3 of these requirements and are especially effective for diabetics and ex-diabetics. I started using these 7 tricks, and soon I went long past the 3-month mark without needing any medication. And as an added bonus, I also lost 19 pounds. Things were really looking up, but it almost didn't last. I kept having days when I almost needed an injection. I felt like I was walking a tightrope.